Hi everyone, or just Dr. Alcorn, I don't know who's listening to this. For my marginalized identity, I chose to go with the female aspect of myself and talk about Anna Magdalena Bach. So she was known for two things, the first of which is her marriage to Johann Sebastian Bach, and the second of which is the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, which was compiled for her by Johann Sebastian. And because of that book, a lot of us as musicians have heard of her, but we don't actually know that much about her, and that's why I am here today. So, Anna Magdalena had two primary roles in her life, and that is that she was a performer in very limited circles, and she was a wife to Johann Sebastian. And the fact that she was able to do either of those things is based on her very privileged background. She was born into a wealthy and musical family, which allowed her to both perform and meet a performer and composer like Johann Sebastian. So Anna Magdalena was born in 1701 as Anna Magdalena Wilk. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to go for it. Little is known about the specifics of her childhood, but it is known that she came from a very musical family. Her father was a court trumpeter at Zeitz, and her mother was the daughter of another church organist, so she was surrounded by music for her entire life. This allowed her access to musical circles and performance opportunities, and those musical circles allowed her to meet Johann Sebastian, which is incredibly important for her life. So there is a rumor that Anna Magdalena was a public, well-known figure due to her performances. This is not true. Most of her performances were in the context of the church that her father played at with her father. She was, however, paid for her performances, which was a great thing for a woman at the time. And these performances allowed her to meet Johann Sebastian through the church that she played at, which was Kuthen, which is seen in this picture here. And this led to her meeting Johann Sebastian, who played there before he moved to Leipzig. So they obviously met at that church, and their marriage was unusual for a few reasons. Firstly, their age difference for the times was not bad. She was 20 when they got married, and he was 36. That's a 16-year-old difference, which is gross now, but was not gross in, 1721. Also, Johann Sebastian waited 18 months after his first wife died to marry Anna Magdalena, which was very unusual, especially considering that he had children. Most men in his position would attempt to marry almost immediately. So at the age of 20, Anna Magdalena became the stepmother to 4 children and gave birth to many more children. She gave birth 13 times in the first 20 years of their marriage, and only 6 of those children survived. So that's not great, and it also meant that she had 10 children at one point, which is a lot for anyone to handle. So when Johann Sebastian was away performing, Anna Magdalena was responsible for both taking care of and educating her children musically. The two of them had a lot of really musically gifted children, like a lot of us have heard of Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who was a composer like his father. So how did a woman with very little formal musical training educate 10 musically gifted children? This brings us to her influence on Johann Sebastian Bach's works. So, Johann Sebastian Bach compiled the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, and we're going to take a quick listen to this piece from that notebook, the Minuet in G major, BVW 114. So a lot of us have heard that piece, not only because it's part of a really well-known Bach collection, but also because it's one of the pieces in the Suzuki piano and violin books. It's a really great piece for young students to play for a whole bunch of reasons. It's repetitive, it's very tonal, it's very scalar, and that's exactly why it was written. The, harpsichord works at the time, even though this recording is piano, were written for the education of Bach's children. And Anna Magdalena would use the pieces in the notebook as a guide to teaching her own children when Bach was away. The notebook also served as Anna Magdalena's guide to her own continued musicianship. Their marriage did not stop her from being a musician in her own right. and Bach encouraged this. He wrote a lot of songs for soprano in the notebook for Anna Magdalena's practice, and the two would perform together on on special occasions, such as the birthday of Princess Charlotte of Leipzig. Bach enjoyed showing off his wife's musical abilities. He referred to her as a talented singer and was proud of that in letters to his friends and colleagues. So this is one of the arias from the Notebook for Anna Magdalena. I don't know how to pronounce the German title, but in English it's Aria for the Young. It's just a great example of the kind of thing that Anna Magdalena would be singing at the time.
Nimmst du dein Herz mir schenken, so war es heimlich an, dass unser beider Denken niemand erraten kann. Die Liebe muss bei beiden allzeit verschwiegen sein, drum schließt die größte Freude in deinem Herzen ein.
So, Anna Magdalena, in addition to being a musician and a music educator for her children, was also basically Bach's secretary. She was a copyist in certain scenarios. She was not one of Bach's primary copyists, as he paid others to do the majority of his copying, but she did produce very reliable copies of a lot of his instrumental works, including the cello suites, the violin partitas, and large sections of the Well-Tempered Clavier. This was usually so Bach could give a copy to one of his personal students while maintaining the copy that he wrote for himself. And on this slide, you can see the professionalism of her copying, as the left picture is of one of Bach's primary copyists copying a measure from one of his violin pieces, and the right picture is her copying another measure, that same measure. I know the rhythm is not the same in those two pictures. I do not know which one is correct. It just shows like her calligraphy was legible and clear and up to the standards of a professional copyist. There are also a lot of theories that Anna Magdalena composed some works that were credited to Bach. That's what we're going to dive into next. There's very little concrete evidence for any theory that she composed. But the evidence that does exist is firstly that her and Johann Sebastian Bach's calligraphy were very similar. We don't know why those similarities exist. It could be coincidence, and it also could be that he expected her handwriting to look like his when she copied his works. We have no idea. But it makes it difficult to distinguish between things penned by Bach and things penned by Anna Magdalena. Some have theorized that she's written some pretty significant pieces, including the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Yeah, like that Toccata and Fugue in D minor. This is theorized because of the octave doubling in that opening section, which Bach didn't use in any of his other organ pieces, but that's the only evidence that we have for the theory that she wrote that, which isn't much. The Australian musicologist Martin Jarvis theorized that she wrote the 6 cello suites, and this is unlikely for a few reasons. The first is that there's no evidence that Anna Magdalena ever studied a string instrument or had the technical knowledge to compose for one. And also, Jarvis's primary argument for the theory is that the cello suites are less musically mature than Bach's other works. That's problematic for a couple reasons. First of all, the cello suites are not less musically mature than almost anything. They're considered a standard in professional cello repertoire. And also, why is it that our primary evidence for something being written by a woman is that it's less musically mature? That argument is not made for other things that are considered to not be written by Bach, such as the pieces in the notebook that are by Christian Petzold. Those are argued on the basis of stylistic differences or actual physical evidence like differences in calligraphy or small signatures. It's never argued that a piece is not written by Bach, but instead another man because of musical merit. But given all that, it's very unlikely that Anna Magdalena actually wrote anything that's contributed to Bach. So, if she didn't do anything at a really professional level, if she wasn't a professional copyist, a composer, or a well-known performer, why do we bother to study her? And that's because she wasn't exceptional. She is representative of so many women at the time who came from a relatively privileged background and grew up around music, learning an instrument or learning to sing, and then continued to develop their own musical abilities throughout their lives in whatever situation they could, even if it wasn't a formal or well-paid outlet. And this is so important for us to know now because our whole goal is to produce musicians out of anyone, not just people who are going to spend the rest of their lives on music. Anna Magdalena Bach would be a great student for any band director to have, as she just kept playing, despite her real career being that of a mother and a wife. So, if we could give that to our students, it would be pretty cool. So that's Anna Magdalena Bach. Thank you so much for listening. Here's a bibliography of information about Anna Magdalena Bach. Thank you so much.